Welcome back. In this video we'll look at subtracting fractions, and in this example today we have an improper fraction and a mixed number that involves a negative integer. So let's take a look. In another video I talked about how we can convert between improper fractions and mixed numbers, and I suggested that one reason we might want to convert a mixed number such as -2 1/5 to an improper fraction would be when we are adding or subtracting fractions. And so this is one instance where I'm going to do that. So to do so, I am going to take my denominator, which is 5, and I'm going to multiply that by 2, and I'm going to add 1 and remain over the denominator of 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11 over 5, and this will be negative. So just as my negative integer here, my negative integer here. So now I can see that -2 1/5 is equal to -11/5. So let's take a look at how we can now add these together. And I'm going to do this in two methods. The first is looking at the lowest common multiple. So I'm going to rewrite my problem. I have 7/4 subtracting -11/5. And using the lowest common multiple, I start by identifying my denominator in my first fraction, which is a 4. And I'm going to skip count by 4s. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. And then the denominator of my second fraction, d2, is 5. So then I'm going to count by 5s, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. And what I'm going to do now is to find the lowest common multiple. So I'm just going to move along my list of numbers here until I find one that matches. So 5, no. 10, no. 15, no. 20, yes. I can see that my lowest common multiple will be 20. So I have a 20 here and I have a 20 here. Okay, and so now to create my equivalent fraction with a common denominator so that I can actually subtract these fractions, because as we know that in order to add or subtract fractions we need a common denominator. The denominator needs to be the same. So I'm going to take my first fraction, my 7/4, and to create the equivalent fraction I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the fifth multiple, so I'm going to multiply my 7/4. I'm going to multiply that denominator by 5, and then I'm going to create an equivalent fraction, I need to do the same to the numerator. And then I'm going to subtract, and now I'm going to look here. So 5, 10, 15, 20, so that's the fourth multiple. So I'm going to take my -11/5, and I'm going to multiply the denominator by 4, and again I'm going to multiply the numerator by the same to create the equivalent fraction. So 7 times 5 is 35. So 35. And 4 times 5 is 20. And I'm going to subtract from that. -11 times 4 is -44. And 5 is 20. Okay. So now that we have our denominators being the same, I can rewrite this problem as being equal to 35 subtracting -44 all over the denominator of 20. And we know, hopefully, we can remember that when we're subtracting a negative, it is the same as adding a positive. We're taking away negative values. So we're going to take our 35, and to subtract a negative we can add a positive 44 over 20. And so 35 plus 44 is equal to 79 over 20. And now we have an answer that is an improper fraction, and we're going to convert that back to being a mixed number in order to simplify. And so to do that, I am going to begin by dividing, and you can look at this in another video that I have outlining how we can convert back in between improper and mixed numbers, and I will include that link at the end of this video. So step one is to take my 79 and I'm going to divide it by 20, and that is equal to 3.95. Now I'm not worried about the remainder, I'm just worried about this number. This will be the whole number in our mixed number. But in my second step is I'm going to take that 3 and I'm going to multiply that by my denominator, and I get 3 times 60. Oops, sorry. 60. And now I'm going to take my original numerator, 79, and I'm going to subtract 60, and that leaves me with 19. This is now going to be my new numerator. So 79 over 20 will be equal to my new whole number of 3, my new numerator of 19, and the denominator will stay the same. So here we can see that the answer will be 3 and 19/20. Now, if we wanted to look at this in a different way, we can use a different method of cross multiplication, and it will look somewhat similar. So our original problem was 7/4 subtracting negative 2 1/5, and I'm going to use the improper fraction, so I'm going to convert this to an improper fraction, which we did up at the top. And if we scroll back up here, we can see that the improper fraction was actually negative 11/5. So I am going to rewrite this as 7/4 subtracting negative 11/5. Okay, now I'm going to use a cross multiplication technique. Some people refer to this as the butterfly method, simply because as I go about doing this, it kind of uses the shape of a butterfly to help us. So just to make things a bit more clear, I'll move down and give us some space. So 7/4, and then we have subtracting negative 11 over 5. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cross multiply these over here. And so 4 times negative 11 is negative 44. And then I'm going to cross multiply these two. So the cross multiplication sort of creates the wings of the butterfly. So we have 7 times 5, which is 35. Oops, that's a bad 5. Okay, our operation is to subtract here. So I'm going to simply put a subtraction symbol up here, where our antenna are for our butterfly, and then down here I'm going to take 4 times 5, I'm going to multiply the denominators together, and 4 times 5 is 20. So using this information, I can take this as my new numerator and this as my new denominator. And so let's take a look and see what that looks like. If we were to rewrite this, we would get 35 subtracting negative 44 over 20. And if we take a look up here for a second, we will see that that looks the same as what we got here when we used our lowest common multiple. So we'll scroll back down here to our thing and we'll continue to solve the problem. So 35 subtract negative 44 is the same as 35 plus 44 over 20, and we know that that is 79 over 20. And if we remember from our previous work, we converted that 79 over 20 to being 3 and 19/20. So now that we've already done this particular work here, I'm not going to duplicate that again. I will 3 and simply write that in as 3 and 19 over 20. Okay, so I hope that helps in subtracting fractions. This one had a lot of different elements. It had improper fractions, it had mixed numbers, it also had negative integers. And so I hope that in looking at this problem in two different ways, we can feel a bit more comfortable in adding and subtracting fractions, in this case subtracting fractions. Okay, have a good day.